Welcome to the Road Hogs Radio Network, brought to you by theroadhogs.com and Road Hogs Motorcycle Magazine. Let's get the show started. Here's your host.
And welcome to the next episode of Classic Chrome. Hope this finds you well and getting ready for the holidays. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight, heard live on the Road Hogs Radio Network. You can find out more about the Road Hogs and read the monthly magazine, and by going to www.theroadhogs.com. Now, Classic Chrome is a radio station, but we also have just started doing a monthly article in the Road Hogs magazine. So be sure to check that out every month, and we're going to talk about all things vintage. So with that, let's go ahead and go into tonight's show. We've got a great audience, or a great program lined out for you. With me tonight, I've got two friends of mine, Keith Kizer and Steve Klein, and tonight we're going to be talking about the club aspect of vintage motorcycling, more specifically, the Antique Motorcycle Club of America. Founded in 1954, the AMCA is the largest vintage motorcycle club in the United States, and the membership is in the thousands, the tens of thousands. So all throughout the year, the AMCA presents multiple swap meets, road runs, tech seminars, et cetera, and it's a great way for people to get involved with like-minded enthusiasts when it comes to vintage motorcycles. So tonight we're going to be talking about the AMCA national level, and Keith is the newly appointed executive director for the Antique Motorcycle Club of America. So Keith has some great topics for us, talking about the future expansions and plans for the AMCA, and it's a chance for AMCA members out there to listen in and learn a little bit more about Keith. We've also got Steve Klein with us, and Steve is the president of the Cherokee chapter of the AMCA, located in Georgetown, Texas. The Cherokee chapter is the fastest growing chapter in all of the networks, and they're doing a lot of great things here in Georgetown. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and bring Keith and Steve in. Now, Keith has been around motorcycles since he was 11, as I understand it. He's had a long storied past with the AMA. He has also been involved with the ProStar motorcycle drag racing circuit. Keith, are you there? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Buck, how you doing? I appreciate you having me on the show tonight. As far as the 11-year-old part, that's actually when I started racing. I've been around motorcycles since I was about 5 years old, is when my dad started putting us kids on motorcycles, and we have been involved in that ever since. But I started racing with AMA at the age of 11. I started out racing motocross and then quickly went to flat track. And that's what I did through my teenage years. And then my brother was 4 years ahead of me, so he started racing at the same time. And he eventually went to drag racing. And because of that ended my short track days, because he went drag racing before I was old enough to start driving to the flat track races by myself. So I ended up tagging along with him to the drag races, though I didn't race initially, but just was crewing with him. So through that effort, in the late 80s is when I actually started AMA ProStar. So it was the drag racing division of the AMA. It didn't start out that way, essentially, but eventually it grew to that. But it was something that I started in Texas when I was living there in Houston. And I moved the operation to Huntsville, Alabama back in the early 90s. But it grew to be the largest all-motorcycle drag racing sanctioning body in the world. So we averaged over 500 racers per event, and had over $1 million in contingency sponsorship money each year. So it was a big deal. We had factory participation from Yamaha, Suzuki, Kawasaki, Honda, Harley-Davidson, and, you know, we certainly enjoyed the heydays of drag racing back in the 90s and in the early 2000s. So From that, I ended up being courted by the AMA to come in and essentially run their road racing department, but eventually that led to being the senior director of pro racing. And unfortunately, I only did that for 2 years before they sold the whole pro racing department to the Daytona Motorsports Group down in Daytona. So anyway, that's what eventually led to the opportunity for me to come to work for the AMCA. And the qualification for that more than anything was not necessarily the race history, but the long history of being involved with membership-based organizations and growing those. So that's how I got here, and plan to make a lot of positive changes when it comes to promotions of the AMCA and get the name out to a new group of motorcyclists, but certainly not wanting to ever change the heritage.
Well, Keith, on behalf of the tens of thousands of AMCA members out there, I'd like to be the first to welcome you officially as the new executive director, and we wish you all the success in the world. We know you're going to do great. You're passionate about motorcycling, and I think that's what the membership of the AMCA really desires out there. So welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. Steve, are you there? Can you tell us about the Cherokee chapter and a little bit about yourself?
Good evening, gentlemen. Keith, you look sharp tonight. Buck, glad to be here. Now, Howard Stern and Jimmy Fallon are not real happy that I canceled them to be on your show, but they'll have to deal with it, I guess.
Well, it's much appreciated.
No, I'll tell you, Keith's right. The AMCA has over 10,000 members, not only coast to coast in Canada to Mexico and in Mexico and in Japan and all over Europe. But the common denominator with this group is that everybody is into the collection, restoration, preservation, use and enjoyment of antique motorcycles. We categorize antiques as 35 years or older, and make, mark, or brand makes no difference. Keith, I think when you and I first met, right after you were hired, one of the discussions we had, and I promise, Buck, we'll talk about my chapter in a minute, I just get excited about the AMCA. It's a mere 5 years older than I are. I think the common fallacy with the Antique Motorcycle Club of America is that it is a Harley-Davidson and Indian organization that allows a few Triumphs and Nortons to show up. Absolutely wrong.
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen,
that's the most common misconception.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen listening with us this evening, grab a pen, because some of the information you're going to hear from Keith and I and Buck is well worth jotting down. AntiqueMotorcycle.org is the AMCA website. Go to it. Lots of good information. All of our national meets, our national road runs, our swap meets, membership information is on that website. Cherokee chapter. Buck, thank you for asking. The Cherokee chapter is actually, the original territory was Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. We now have two very fine chapters, the Diamond chapter and the Heritage chapter in Arkansas. So the Cherokee chapter is really not focusing much membership effort in the state of Arkansas. We've got two great AMCA chapters there already. We started, I've been a member of the Cherokee chapter, I believe, 8 or 9 years now. Cherokee chapter was founded 35 years ago. Certainly not one of the oldest chapters in America, but it's been around a long time. We've had some very dedicated enthusiasts down here that kept this chapter alive and well for 35 years. Good group of people. We do a lot of events. We do bike shows. We do road runs. And we've had a lot of membership growth recently that maybe we can chat about this evening. But it's just not Texas. It's all of Texas, all of Oklahoma.
Right, and I think for a lot of people out there hearing that the Cherokee chapter is a wide variety of areas. I think that's a big factor, because I think the most common question that's posed to me when it comes to the AMCA is, I want to be involved in the local level, but the nearest chapter is 300 miles away from me. And the nice thing about the Cherokee chapter is that it encompasses a wide area, as do a lot of the chapters. I know the Confederate chapter in Memphis, that the base is in Memphis, but they deal with Mississippi and Alabama, and, it's not just one segregated area. So it's nice to hear for people who are looking to get involved with a local chapter of the AMCA that they don't have to be at every single meeting, that a lot of it can be done online and through emails, and there's other people in the area that are a part of the same network. That
it's a great point, Buck. America's a big place. I'll give the East Coast as an example. I really don't know what the average size chapter is membership-wise, and I should. I'm sorry. I'm sure some other AMCA chapter presidents will email me tomorrow and correct me, but, if you live in Pennsylvania or Connecticut or Maryland or New York, to drive 100 miles to go to an AMCA or a club event can be a tough deal. Heavily populated areas, a 100-mile ride on a vintage motorcycle might even be a little bit on the dangerous side. You have other parts of America that are wider open and more rural, Texas being one of them. The challenge we had in Texas is, it's 1,400 miles from the south to the north, and people can only drive a certain distance to attend a meeting or attend a Saturday or a Sunday ride. And you certainly aren't going to drive several hundred miles on some of these antique machines and stand the chance of having a flat tire or mechanical failure. So our biggest challenge as a chapter has always been, how can we reach out to people in Dallas on the north, Dallas, Fort Worth, Denton? How can we reach people in West Texas? How can we reach people in Houston, Texas on the east, Corpus Christi on the coast, Harlingen, Brownsville, the Valley, San Benito, down in the deep south, and then you've got San Antonio and Austin and other cities in the central part of the state. It's a real challenge. So, my recommendation to the AMCA board, to other presidents of other chapters, to Keith as our new executive director, is, ideas are good and well, but you have to adapt them to the environment you're in, and the best way to do that is talk to your members. They're the
Absolutely.
ones we all serve.
Absolutely, and I'd like to kind of go and shift our focus here to the national level. A lot of people out there, a lot of our listeners out there, this is a new show, so we've got a wide variety of listeners in the audience, and I think there's a large chunk of people that Keith and you and I have had a conversation in the past about. A lot of people don't know what the AMCA is. So I'd like to kind of focus now and bring Keith in and talk about exactly what the AMCA is, a little bit of the history, and talk about, what kind of things go on throughout the year.
Well, going back to the history of the AMCA, most people would know that, it's been around since 1954. And you had 4 founders that started this up in the Northeast. And their passion was still the same rules, is 35 years or older. But you got to look at that when you're back in the 50s. These were guys trying to protect bikes built the first motorcycles ever built into the 20s. And so today we've just kept that up, and now we're trying to protect, preserve, and ride motorcycles that starting in a few weeks will now be 1980 and older. So, it's all about getting out there and participating with these motorcycles. And, you know, even for the people who don't want to participate at that level, I mean, the nice thing is you don't have to own a motorcycle to be a member of the AMCA. You just got to like old motorcycles. So with that history, it spread. It started going down the East Coast and then made a big leap over to California and started to fill in between. And as it started out with the one chapter, it grew to 59 chapters as we have today. And as y'all both said, over 10,000 members. But at the same time, what you were talking about with it, a lot of people not knowing about it, is a club made up of people that share the same interest. And it has not really been a focus in the past to reach beyond those boundaries and start getting membership from outside basically this inner circle. Even though it's over 10,000 people big, you've got to look at the overall size of the country and what a small percentage of people that is. So using myself as an example, being from the racing world, I know a lot of people that I talk to that when I tell them of my new job or it's something that they've read on Facebook or wherever in a press release, you know, they admit that they've never heard of the AMCA. And it's not just people from the racing community. It's people from, you know, the manufacturers that are involved in all aspects of motorcycling. But I think it's because there's a lot of confusion in anything with an acronym. You know, if you just call it the AMCA, well, then there's ARMA, which is the Vintage Road Racing and Motocross and Flat Track organization. So a lot of people get those confused just because of the word antique. And, of course, we like, as you said in your introduction, we really like to expand on that word antique and use words like vintage or classic because a lot of people, when they think antique, they just think, oh, well, that's not new. But, you know, the trick is if you go out there and you're reaching out to a whole new community and promoting outside of your comfort zone, then eventually you pick up people who are very interested in old motorcycles. They've just never known that there was an organization for them to plug in or get involved. And, you know, I don't really care if they show up and they're on a 72 CB350 Honda, then, you know, eventually being around these events, they're going to grow to love lots of other different types of old motorcycles. And our hope, and we'll talk about this later in bringing in more of a youth element into the program, these are the guys that we need to train to have a passion for antique motorcycles so that they're the guys buying up the antique, you know, allotment of motorcycles that are owned by thousands and thousands of people now. I mean, we want those handed down, well, sold, I'm sure, to people that will carry on the tradition.
You know, Keith, I'd like to interject a couple things, Buck, if I may. I believe most of the people listening into the show this evening are actually people interested in motorcycles or they're already motorcycle enthusiasts. There's two avenues that people get interested in our vintage sport. I don't like the word antique. I like vintage, sorry. You know, I think the first group are people that, you know, had a rigid frame mini bike with a 5-horsepower motor like I did when they were age 7, okay? And they got to experience the freedom of driving your own vehicle. Or they had a mini trail Honda 50 or Honda 70 or a Cushman, okay? Those people later in life can afford, they have some discretionary income, they can afford to go purchase something that brings back happy memories from their childhood. I think the second group of people, often I have found, maybe when they were in high school or college, I have to be careful about ages here, but they were in high school or they were in college, and at that time of their life, the coolest, neatest, hippest motorcycle was fill in the blank.
Right.
And they could not afford it. And now they're married, have a good career, kids have gotten old enough, they have a few dollars left in their pocket, and by gosh, they're going to go out and buy that fill-in-the-blank high-cool motorcycle that they couldn't have 20 or 30 years ago. Those are the stories that I hear most often when I'm at events. I always like to ask the question, what was the defining moment that you decided that you were really interested in two-wheel transportation? Sorry to interrupt. I think that's where most enthusiasts come from.
And, it's interesting that you bring up that point because it makes me think of a story that I've heard all of my life. A lot of our listeners out there, they may not know of my history with motorcycles. I'm 23 years old, and I love vintage motorcycles. I breathe them. I live them, breathe them. I wake up in the morning thinking about them, go to sleep thinking about them.
Ladies and gentlemen, Buck Carson is not stretching that statement, trust me.
I am obsessed. But the story I wanted to share, which is exactly what Steve was just saying, came from my dad. And my dad is the one that got me involved in the antique motorcycles, and I will be forever grateful to him. And we are still involved together. But I can remember when I was young hearing the story, and I might get it wrong. I hope I don't. But I remember hearing the story from him that when he was in college, he was dating a girl, and they were dating for a long time, and, going steady. And he went to pick her up one day to go for a date to the movies or whatever it was. And when he got to her house, sitting outside was another guy who had a brand spanking new Triumphbonneville. And it was a pre-unit Triumph. It had the tank parcel on it. It was gold and cream colored, brand new off the assembly line.
And if not for that motorcycle, that would have been your mother.
This is true. The long story short is that the girl he was dating rode off on the motorcycle, and he wasn't even upset about the girl. He just wanted the motorcycle. So when he brought me in, we started our collection on the basis of he had to have that Triumphbonneville.
That's funny.
And it's a lot less expensive to own than the lady he lost, probably. I had the last buck, my first bike, and I paid for it myself. I paid $72 at age 7 of my own cash for a chrome rigid frame mini bike with a black 5-horse Tecumseh motor. Got it home. It took all of about 5 minutes before I figured out how to change the governor so it would go faster. Won't bore you with anything else, but if my father, rest his soul, was still alive, I spent an hour and a half one day trying to drag a bridge plank out in the middle of our farmyard and get it lifted up on a sawhorse because I had just watched Evel Knievel on TV. After about an hour of struggling with this very heavy board, my father had me come in the house for lunch on the farm and explained to me this was not one of my better ideas, and it took me another hour to take it all back apart. So, Buck, you ought to think about on one of your call-in shows in the future, let people from all over America call in and tell us what their defining moment was or what their very first motorcycle was, or what the motorcycle was that they wished was their first motorcycle. I think it would be a very enjoyable show for listeners.
Absolutely, and I think we are going to do that in the future. That's a great idea, Steve. I really appreciate you saying that. I guess I'd like to kind of move the focus back towards AMCA, and for a lot of people that don't know about the AMCA, all throughout the year, starting in correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, but starting in February, there are swap meets that start up, sponsored by the chapters. And as Keith said, there are 59 chapters in the AMCA network. And these local chapters sponsor a swap meet, judging session, tech seminar weekend, basically. This goes on throughout the year.
The first AMCA event, Buck, if I'm not mistaken, is like the 27th, 28th of February. The Omaha chapter has their national meet up in Fremont, Nebraska. It's
right,
an awesome.
And that's our one and only indoor show.
Well, in February 27th in Fremont, Nebraska, that's a smart deal, Keith. It's a little chilly up there. But if you've not been to see the Omaha chapter in Fremont, it is a wonderful show, great group of people, and some of the sharpest antique motorcycles you'll find anywhere in America.
That's right. And at these AMCA shows and events, what you'll find, ladies and gentlemen, is when you go to the event, you're going to see a multitude of things. You will see motorcycles that you have only seen behind glass walls in museums being ridden around with people on sidecars and on the back and just having fun and enjoying them. As you're walking through the gates, you will see piles of parts that should be just almost illegal to sell if you're looking at it from a public perspective. And you can see the judging aspect, which a lot of people don't really understand the judging system of the AMCA, and what it is it's set up so that people can restore a motorcycle and restore it back to the way it was rolling off of the showroom line or the factory assembly line into the showroom. And the judging system, and I'll let Keith explain a little bit more about it, is set up on a points basis where people bring their restored motorcycles there, and certified judges through the AMCA can tell you whether or not it is factory correct, down to platings and fasteners and so on and so forth. So when you go to an AMCA event all throughout the year, and this runs into September, October, all over the country, and it's not in one segregated area. It's the East Coast, the West Coast, and it's all types of events. But what you'll find is that the expertise and the knowledge at these events is absolutely amazing, and you will never see anything else like it. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Keith and talk a little bit more about the judging and how to get involved with the AMCA and where to go.
Well, starting off, let's start with there. If we've got listeners that are maybe antique folks or not, or vintage motorcycle enthusiasts or not, if you're not a member of the AMCA, again, it is antiquemotorcycle.org is what will get you to our website, or you can even see our Facebook page at Antique Motorcycle Club of America. But getting into the judging system, it's a 100-point system. And when a person gets involved in judging, if they're not completely an expert in what their motorcycle is, this is a great place for them to learn and find out. Because let's say you enter your motorcycle for the first time. There is a progression level of awards that are given out. So when you start off, when you go through the judging system, things that are not correct with your motorcycle, that will be noted on your judging form. And it's a great way to learn that, okay, this is not correct, because it's down to the right type of fasteners, the way that it is plated. And Steve can tell you a lot more about this because he's got a garage full of motorcycles that he's restored. So, it's something that you work your way up through the progression of the levels, and as you go up, you eventually can be judged at the top level. So, it's a competition against yourself. It's not like you're competing against the motorcycle sitting next to you. It is just you're going against the 100-point system, and with the eventual goal.
I am not a person that really cares if my individual machines in my collection have been judged or not. Just happens not to be my deal. But you are so correct. I can't tell you how many friends of ours that Buck and I and other people around the country have that have spent a lot of time working on a specific machine. And they think they have it pretty close. Number one, to take that machine to an event where you can share it with other people is very gratifying. But to have AMCA judge experts spend time with you and say, if this was CAD plated instead of parkerized, okay, or if this wiring connection was this way, And they'll tell you 3 or 4 things where the stitching in the seat is not the way it came from the factory. It allows those people to take those machines back home and correct those minor deficiencies and bring it back again. It's a wonderful learning experience, I mean, for all ages. We're seeing people now in their 30s that are starting to become interested, and they go to the judging events so that they can listen and they can observe. Great point, Keith. Great point.
Well, let me ask you something, Steve. The first time that you had a bike judged, this will just be a lesson for listeners, is, let's say it was the first time you judged a bike that wasn't clearly not a 100-point bike. What do you remember as your score the first time out?
Not a good question for me. I have never entered one of my machines in a judging competition.
Okay.
I will tell you a very real experience, though. Many, many, many years ago, I was invited by Dale Wachsler to come out, probably 12 years ago when he first opened the museum in Maggie Valley, North Carolina, Wheels Through Time. I used to stop at Dale's place in Mount Vernon, Illinois, back in the 90s, just to look at his old bikes. Normally never made it past the 1910 sitting on the dining room table. But Dale invited me out to Maggie Valley. My very first vintage bike I ever restored was a 1948 Panhead. First year Pan, last year Springer. I spent close to 2 years on that, and I just knew I had it right. Got to Maggie Valley. A group of Dale's friends were there. We all went to a local restaurant for supper. On the way back, Dale said, "Get your bike and bring it up in the shop. We're going to riding tomorrow. There's a few things I don't care for that aren't quite right." Dale and 4 of his friends literally grabbed tools and disassembled half of my motorcycle. Okay? And Dale crawled up in the attic and started throwing parts down that were correct, period correct, factory parts. And by midnight, they had my motorcycle back together the way it was supposed to be. Now, my first reaction was, you got to be kidding me. I spent 2 years, and you guys in 15 minutes have tore it apart. But what I learned is the passion of people that know the difference between, this cable gets routed this way, okay? And this fastener is painted, and this fastener is parkerized, and this bolt's supposed to be CAD plated. How these people can retain all this knowledge is just unbelievable. So
yes, amazing, and that many judges around the.
Now I do go to judging events, but I personally go to judge. I'm one of the guys that goes to a judging event to stand and listen and observe and to learn. That's where I learn an awful lot. We've got some phenomenal people in our judging program.
Well, Don Dezurek is our chief judge, and so he's the one that's at every one of the 11 meets this year that is in charge of that. But again, going back to that whole system, so Steve's first bike was most likely, based on what they did to it, less than an 85-point bike. So when you first go in, you're judged off of a junior award is the first thing that you can actually go to. So, if you have 85 points as a minimum, then you can win a junior second award. And then once you get that bike up to 90 points, then you go to a junior first, and you're eligible, once you've won a junior award, to go to a senior award. So the senior is once you get 95 points. And then after that, once you get the 95 points and you maintain that, is the ultimate goal of being that Winner's Circle Preservation Award. And, there's a lot of people that have obtained that and still continue to go to the meets every year, because that's a proud crown to wear on your head.
Well, and the other thing, Keith, is, if you have a 98, 99-point bike, pick a model, pick a year, and I have a same year, same model bike, it gives me something to strive for over a period of time, to find the correct parts, to get the correct finishes, to bring mine up to your level. copying somebody is the ultimate compliment.
Right. That's very true. And, for a lot of people out there, the thing that the AMCA offers is that there are a wide variety of activities and mental processes that you could be involved in with the club, because a lot of people look at the judging process as a way to increase the value, and certainly it does to a certain point. Obviously, no matter how pretty your motorcycle is or how correct it is, it all depends on what somebody is willing to pay if you're wanting to sell it.
But you're exactly right. Some of the machines in my collection that I have bought that are already restored either are AMCA first or senior award winners, and it adds provenance and it adds a lot of dollars to what the value of that machine can be.
That's exactly right. So for a lot of people, it's a chance to invest in the hobby, because for many folks out there, and many of our listeners are AMCA members who have, award-winning bikes through the judging program. It allows them to increase the value of their collection or make an investment for that purpose. But for many other people, the AMCA is a chance to interact with like-minded enthusiasts and not worry about the financial value. So that's the nice thing about the AMCA, and we're getting ready to take a quick break here, but I wanted to just bring that back into perspective for future members, is that they don't have to worry so much about the judging program. If they're not into it, they don't have to be judged. They can just bring the motorcycle and have fun.
That's
Buck,
right.
when we come back, can we talk about the other programs that the AMC has besides judging?
That's right. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the youth programs. We're going to be talking about
swap meets.
Swap meets. There's all kinds of aspects out there that the AMCA offers. It really makes it a complete club and the end-all, be-all for vintage motorcyclists. So
10 seconds,
we're going to take
10 seconds, if I may. If somebody is listening that only is going to put 2,000, 3,000 miles a year on a motorcycle, buy something that was done in the 70s. It's less money than a new motorcycle. You'll enjoy it more, and it will go up in value.
That's right. And so on that note, we're going to take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. So stay close, folks. We're going to be right back.
Looking for a great place to put your kickstand down? Take a trip through time to scenic Red Boiling Springs, Tennessee, home of the Cyclemost Motorcycle Museum, where in rust we trust. Be sure to take a long stroll through a large collection of vintage motorcycles and memorabilia representing the two-wheeled history of the United States. After shopping the extensive gift shop, prop your feet up in a rocking chair on the front porch and take in the sights and sounds of history all around you. While visiting, don't forget to check out the world-class Cyclemost Restoration Shop, where history comes to life. Need help getting your classic motorcycle back on the road? Look no further than the experts at Cyclemost Speed Shop, who specialize in all aspects of vintage motorcycles, from engine and transmission builds to complete restorations. With a hard-to-find parts inventory and friendly specialists at your service, Cyclemost can handle your needs. Located at 319 East Main Street, Red Boiling Springs, Tennessee, and also online at www.cyclemost.com. For museum hours and all shop inquiries, please call 615-670-8942. You can also get daily updates from the museum and shop by checking out Cyclemost on Facebook and Instagram. One of the most important parts of any ride is having a friendly location to get a bite to eat and something cool to drink. The next time you find yourself out on the road, be sure to make Slim and Shorty's Bar and Restaurant your destination location. offering a full-service bar, extensive selection of great food, and a family atmosphere. Slim & Shorty's is the perfect spot to pass the time with your friends. Located at 617 Clinton Street in historic downtown Arkadelphia, Arkansas. There's never a dull moment at Slim & Shorty's. Check us out on Facebook for upcoming live music, trivia, and entertainment, or call direct at 870-245-2365. Slim & Shorty's. Food, drink, fun.
Welcome back, everybody, to Classic Chrome. Tonight's special guests are Steve Klein, the Cherokee Chapter AMCA President, and Keith Kizer, the newly appointed Executive Director for the Antique Motorcycle Club of America. Before we left, we were talking about the judging programs and all the wonderful activities you can find at the year-round AMCA events, starting in February with the Omaha Chapter-sponsored Fremont Meet. So we're going to continue talking about the other programs that the AMCA offers and kind of lead into how you can join and become a member of the AMCA. So I'm going to leave the floor open to whoever would like to start, and let's talk about the other programs that the AMCA offers. We'll focus on the youth program aspect a little bit later on.
Buck, let me interject a second. We've got over 10,000 listeners tonight, I think. Good-looking crowd, isn't it, Keith?
Yes, great. We love it.
In March, New Smyrna Beach, Florida, the Sunshine Chapter. In April, one of the greatest events in the country, the Perkins Chapter National Meet in Ole, Pennsylvania. In May, our European brothers and sisters have a big event in the Netherlands. Also in May is the Southern National Meet in Denton, North Carolina. The Rhinebeck Meet in Rhinebeck, New York is in June. The Viking Chapter Meet is in St. Paul, Minnesota in June also. And the Yankee National Road Run is going to be in Keene, New Hampshire this year, also in June. And, I think the Fort Sutter Chapter in Dixon, California is in June as well. Wauseon, Ohio is big motorcycle country up north. They have an incredible meet in July. The Yankee Chapter in Connecticut is in July. The Badger Heritage Chapter has a national road run this year in Wisconsin. And then in September, the Black Hills Chapter has a national road run. And Yerba Buena Chapter National Road Run is in Yosemite. We've got a lot of national road runs this year. And the last event of the year with the AMCA is the Chesapeake Chapter has their national meet in Pennsylvania. So for all of our listeners, doesn't matter where you live in the United States, you can load up a bike on a trailer or gas it up a couple times, and you have somewhere to go, and you will enjoy it.
That's right. And at each of these meets, the next thing I guess to talk about is the big thing at these meets is the swap meet. I mean, so you've got up to 750 vendor spots at some of the events, and if there's anything vintage, antique, classic motorcycle parts that you're looking for, this is the place to start.
Keith, you're right. The first time I went to a meet, a lot of times they're held in the local county fairground or a large exposition center, and to see 400 to 800 vendors from all over the United States with tables and parts laying on tarps. Pick a motorcycle, pick a brand, pick a model. If you cannot find the parts you're missing, they probably don't exist.
And it's not just motorcycle parts either. I mean, when you go through this, it is the county fair. You'll find lots of memorabilia,
clothing,
books, T-shirts,
literature.
That's right. Leather jackets. I mean, and that's the great thing about the word vintage is that the young people, I mean, my kids are in their mid-20s, and they buy clothes that we threw away in the 70s. I mean, that's what they are. They're into vintage clothes, and certainly vintage motorcycle jackets are a big item now. But there's just this carnival atmosphere in the vendor area, and you can certainly find just about anything motorcycle memorabilia in there. And even if you're not a classic bike owner, you'll have a good time just going around and looking at things and talking to the people, because you'll find the friendliest people in the world at a swap meet. And
some of them have very long beards.
This is very true. Very true. When
you look at the mission statement of the AMCA, collecting is one avenue. Restoration, there's a lot of people that restore machines. A lot of people that there's a difference between preservation and restoration. My passion, my collection of machines run from 1908 through the 60s. My real passion happens to be pre-1916, preferably single cylinder, preferably original paint, original condition, unmolested motorcycles. And there's a large movement of people in the country that are not into restoration, where we nickel plate and rewire and repaint and show polish a machine back. It's do a sympathetic preservation. Get it running mechanically correct, but leave the original finishes the way they are, so that people have an opportunity to see something that is actually 80, 90, 100 years old or older, and then actually start the machine for them so they can hear it run. Parts, literature, clothing, memorabilia. There's just some racing. There are vintage motorcycle racing organizations in the country. I love going to Wauseon, Ohio, for the simple reason there are vintage motorcycles racing at that event. To see board track racers that are 100 years old go around a dirt track is just a phenomenal experience. Tank shift, foot clutch, 30s and 40s motorcycles going around the racetrack. There's just so many different parts of the AMCA that anybody can become involved in, other than a bike show,
Well, that's a good point. You're talking about race bikes. If I can interject there, is
yes, sir.
There is a whole industry of people that I knew, that I grew up with, that they were either flat track racers, motocross racers, drag racers, but as they got older, or maybe as their equipment just wasn't competitive enough, those motorcycles just got shoved off into the corner of their garage. We want those people, because there is a place for them as well, because there is certain areas, if they want to get into the level of judging, that actually allow for old competition bikes to be judged. Now, the criteria is they've got to go back and prove that this motorcycle is in the exact condition that it was when it was competitive. And, if they've got the photos and documentation and entry forms, stuff like that they can prove that, we want that too. And even if you don't want to, again, be judged, we just love to be the place, even on a local level, to where people will bring those motorcycles out and display them and have somewhere to talk about and share with the world what they did.
Please bring them out.
That's right.
All of us have seen, old newsreels and old TV clips of these machines from the teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s racing, and to see people bring those exact same machines out and fire them up and go around the track, it's an awesome experience.
That's right. And, the AMCA, I think Keith will talk in a few minutes about the future expansion plans for it. But, folks, what the main point that we're trying to get across here is that the AMCA is a great organization to be involved with antique motorcycles. And it doesn't matter what you ride or what you have, if it's American-made, if it's Japanese-made, English-made, German-made. They're all welcome, and there's a community of people out there that love them and treasure the history that is represented by the brands. Moving on
Buck,
to go ahead,
Buck,
Steve.
one of the things that I'd like to point out is certainly there's great fellowship, there's great brotherhood, there's great respect, there's great camaraderie. I have got as many friends nationwide and worldwide in the vintage motorcycle sport as I do personally and professionally back here in Texas. The difference being, when you go to an AMCA event, people know your first name, they know what type of motorcycles you're into. They don't care what you do for a living. They don't care if you make $100,000 a year, $5 an hour, or $1 million a year. Your name is Ron or Bob or Steve or Keith or Buck, and you're into Triumphs or BMWs or tank shift Harleys or Indian Scouts, and they don't forget you and they don't forget your motorcycles.
That's right, and it's a great community, and the topic that I would like to bring up myself, I don't want to really toot my own horn here because I don't enjoy that, but I'm involved with Keith and Steve and on a pretty regular basis. I'm involved with the Antique Motorcycle Club of America myself as the National Youth Program Director, and the focus of the Antique Motorcycle Club of America's youth program is getting younger people involved in old motorcycles, because as is the common cry for people that you see at swap meets or shows, it seems to be we need to get more young people involved, and that's very true, because the future generations are the future of keeping history alive in this hobby. So the focus of the Antique Motorcycle Club of America Youth Program is getting youth involved and getting them around machines in all aspects, whether it be learning the history of the old Harleys or Indians or Hondas or Suzukis, or actually restoring them or riding them. Preferably, we'd like to do all of that. We'd like to get a well-rounded education in the University of Vintage Motorcycles. That every year you go to these swap meets and you see young kids around with their parents and families that are interested in old bikes, and they want to learn more. And so this program allows young kids to get involved and really grow and learn more about the history of the motorcycling industry in the United States and worldwide. So one of the things we're going to be doing, and I've been involved as a youth director for I think going on a year now. I think this is a year. And we're always trying to do new things to interest young folks out there. It's direly needed. And so one of the new things we're going to be doing, and I can't announce it yet, but we're working on a project to kind of promote antique motorcycles and the AMCA in a different sense. And that is dealing with the other types of motorcycles out there other than stock restorations, may that be choppers or bobbers or cafe racers. There's a lot of different trends out there that people are interested in, and the younger generation seems to embrace that and run with it, because it provides an outlet for them to get involved with old bikes, but on a limited budget. So we're working on a project. I'm working closely with Keith and a few other members of the AMCA National Board on trying to put together a program and an interesting event that will bring more young people to the AMCA and get them around old bikes. So I guess moving on into the Cherokee chapter and its involvement with young people in motorcycles. Steve, I understand at the chapter Christmas party you had a young man who had just finished his first motorcycle. Can you tell us about that?
Be happy to, Buck. Klein is from the Dallas area. I believe it's Plano. Clinton just went to a non-AMCA event that our chapter participated in. And we can come back and talk about our chapter's reach-out program that we developed about almost 2 years ago and the successes we've had as a result. But our chapter had members, and I believe we had 35 of our members motorcycles showed up at a non-AMCA event, Pistons and Paint Hot Rod Show in Denton, Texas, north of Dallas. Clinton is a grandfather, and he took his 7-year-old grandson, Joe, to this hot rod show, and our chapter was there with 35 vintage motorcycles. Grandfather and grandson bought a rusty 50 Honda mini trail mini bike. Over a period of months, they fixed it, overhauled it, repainted it, restored it. I got a phone call from grandfather that said, I'm a brand new member of your chapter, Mr. Klein. I'd like to come to your chapter Christmas party in December, and I would love to bring my grandson and his very first motorcycle. They drove 3.5 hours to get to Central Texas. We helped young Joe, age 8. Joe, age 8, unload the Mini Trail 50 from his grandfather's SUV. Unbeknownst to our chapter, this young boy wanted Grandpa to bring him 3.5 hours so he could show his very first motorcycle to 75 of our members. We helped the boy unload his motorcycle, and we discovered he had never actually ridden it yet. I have several acres of land across the street from our home, and we took Joe out there and watched a 8-year-old young man learn to ride his very first motorcycle.
That he built.
That he did with, yes, Grandpa said, look, he was spending too much time on video games and computers, and Grandpa wanted to help fix that. You want to see a big grin on a young man's face? You could have saw it a couple of Saturdays ago at our chapter Christmas party. You know, Buck, I'd like to point out, and Keith, please jump in, I think the average age of the AMCA for a number of years has been 52 or 55 years old,
59 years old now.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay. Our chapter is starting a grassroots youth program, so to speak, and we're hoping to develop a good enough program, Buck, that we can come forward and help you and the board of directors at the national level replicate what we're doing and maybe help improve what you're doing. I have a bit of difficulty with calling it the youth program. I think youth, maybe we need to structure this in different age brackets, but youth kind of denotes really young people. And I think in Joe Klein's case, at 7, 8, 9 years old, a youth program is a good thing. Wasion, the chapter up in Ohio, or several chapters up in Ohio, actually did some youth field games this year, where young people were allowed to do field games on small motorcycles. I thought that was a tremendous idea that other chapters should think about implementing. I talked to Richard Spagnoli, our national president, at length earlier this year about the mods and rockers movement in America. Tight jeans rolled up, T-shirts, sleeves rolled up, flat black primer. These, most often they're in college, okay, limited income. They're driving Vespa scooters. They're driving small displacement Honda. They're driving whatever they can afford to buy, but they're customizing what they have because that's what, no different than we started in the sport in our 20s. You buy what you can afford, you paint it, you chop off the fender, you modify a few things, and it becomes your customized motorcycle. So, Buck, you're correct. In one aspect, we have point judging on rare motorcycles to get them restored exactly the way they came from the factory. The other aspect, if we can recognize some people that are doing period correct customs, I think it's a marvelous approach.
Absolutely.
Well,
even look at choppers too. So,
well, We have found a group of young people in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. One that comes to mind is Jesse Law. Jesse's 32 years old. Our chapter gave him the Future of Our Sport award this year at our awards banquet. I'm not going to tell Jesse he's a youth program because he's big enough to toss me on the ground, okay? But I remember when Jesse walked up to our booth at a non-AMCA event and said, "Who are you people? Where did you come from?" Because we had all these flatheads and knuckleheads and panheads and Indian scouts and Indian chiefs. He said, "Who are you people?" Well, we're the Cherokee chapter of the AMCA. What's the AMCA? He left, got on his cell phone, and within an hour there were like 8 or 9 other guys his age showed up. All of them were riding machines that they had built, modified, and customized themselves with the dollars that they could afford to do. That's another whole segment of our socioeconomic and age population that I think the AMCA needs to find an effective way to reach out and make these people feel welcome.
That's right.
That's right.
And that's certainly going to be something that we're working on this year and beyond. And with Bucks out, we're going after that target market as well with that 20s group. Right, Buck?
That's right. And, we're getting close to running out of our time, so I wanted to thank you guys again for coming on. But, Keith, if you could, go ahead and list the website for getting on the AMCA and the contact information so people know where they can find out about being a member and the benefits of being a member. And,
okay.
We invite everybody out there to become members of the Antique Motorcycle Club of America.
Absolutely. And you can get to us by www.antiquemotorcycle.org. And, again, the big benefits of that is our national meets and road runs. But the other great thing is on our website for the members of the forums. And the forums is a great source to ask questions about specific things about restoring motorcycles. And then also you can run free classified ads in the magazine in there. But the great thing is you get this wonderful magazine called the Antique Motorcycle that comes out 6 times a year. And the magazine is worth the $30 by itself if you never go anywhere else. So
no offense to our good friend Buzz Cantor and other magazine publishers, but the Antique Motorcycle Club magazine that comes out 6 times a year, ladies and gentlemen, I think is the best motorcycle publication that you can get in the United States today.
Well, thank you.
And that's very true. So, Steve, if you would, where can people go to find out about the Cherokee chapter and other chapters of the AMCA?
Buck, www.antiquemotorcycle.org does list every single AMCA chapter in the United States and exactly who the president is, an email address, and a phone number. So if you're looking for other people to be friends with that have old bikes, that's a good way to do it. The Cherokee chapter in Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, www.CherokeeAMCA.org. One of the best antique motorcycle club websites in the country currently. Blog, lots of photo albums. Pick a motorcycle. I believe we have 28 different brands of motorcycles in our club today. I think our membership now is approaching 194, 195. So come join us at CherokeeAMCA.org. Keith, enjoyed sharing the time with you this evening, sir. Thank you for taking the position with the AMCA. In my opinion, you're the right man with the right stuff, and we're proud to have you aboard.
Well, we appreciate that. And, what all we're striving for is we want the AMCA to be the home for anyone who likes old motorcycles.
Amen. Buck?
There you go. And you heard it straight from the mouth of the executive director, ladies and gentlemen.
Buck, thank you for inviting us. Ladies and gentlemen, please come back and tune in and watch his show. Buck is a true enthusiast. He knows the right people in the sport. And Buck, thank you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everybody.
Same
That's right.
thing,
Well,
Buck.
thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. And thank you to our audience out there for tuning in tonight. We will be off for the next 2 weeks, spending the Christmas and New Year's holidays with family. So we will not be posting live shows for the next 2 weeks, but we will return on January 7th on the Road Hogs Radio Network. Once again, you can check us out on Facebook by checking out www.facebook.com/ClassicChromeRadio. You can also find links to the Antique Motorcycle Club of America, which has a social media page, under the Antique Motorcycle Club of America's Facebook page, and the Cherokee chapter by visiting the searching Cherokee chapter on Facebook. And we thank you once again for tuning in. We hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we're going to have a lot of fun next time. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to all you, and keep the shiny side out.